Nehemiah chapter number 6. Now, I don't like not finishing my sermons each week, but sometimes it just doesn't work out that way like I have planned. But I think it worked out okay, because next week we're planning on starting a brand new series as we look at the red letters in the Bible and what Jesus' words. As we pick them apart and we look at what Jesus' main focuses were, as he spoke and taught while he was on this earth. We're going to break that down starting next week, and that's going to lead us into our Sunday night series as well. And so we hope that you'll make plans to be a part of that. And so last week and this week, I needed to fill with something more topical, just because I don't want to start a brand new series for only 2 weeks. It's just difficult to do that. And so last week we started the sermon about how to handle hindrances, or handling hindrances. And I think every person in here, regardless of how old you are or how young you are, regardless of how long you've been saved, even if you understand there are times that we are hindered. There's times that we allow the devil and this world to hinder our work for the Lord. I mean, no doubt, let's just be honest this morning. There's no doubt that if we did not give in to the hindrances that come our way, I mean, think about it. Think about the people that we know, that whether they're here or not, think about what our services would look like if people didn't allow hindrances to stop them from serving the Lord. Think about what the attendance would be like this morning. Think about what our attendances would be like on Sunday night and Wednesday nights and for Sunday school if we didn't allow hindrances. Now, again, I know there are always things that cannot be helped in certain situations, but the vast majority of, let's just be honest, the vast majority of things that keep us from something as basic as church attendance is just simple hindrances. And I'm afraid, to be honest, I'm afraid that the hindrances that many times keep people out of church are not, I think sometimes they're hindrances of our own doing. I don't think the devil really has to work very hard for many people to keep them out of church. But besides that, there are other things that God has called us to. How about sharing your faith? We know that God's called us to share our faith. We know that's something that's we're going to see, especially if we start looking at the red letters, that Jesus was put a huge priority on, of witnessing and making disciples. Well, what keeps us from doing that? Think of the hindrances that come into our path, and even the times we say, "Okay, I'm determined this time. I'm gonna live right. I'm gonna rededicate my life to the Lord. I'm gonna make things right with Him. I'm gonna be all in. I'm gonna do that." And then the devil loves to jump all over you, right? As a youth pastor for many years, and being in this camp season that's coming up, it never fails. You take our young people to camp, and there's so many wonderful decisions that are made for the Lord. And they're on fire for the Lord when they come back, and man, they just want to fight hell with a water pistol, right? But then, as time goes along, and they get those cell phones back in their hands, and they get back into their normal routine, they don't get around the right types of people all the time. They're not stating God's word like they were when they were at camp or the conferences we go to. It never fails. You start to see many of those young people kind of fall back and regress, get back to where they were, because they allow those hindrances. They allow what their friends might think. They allow many things to hinder their progress spiritually. But I'm not here to bash on just the young people. I'm not here to bash on anybody. I'm here to be honest with us, because we all struggle with that. I think every person in here at one point or another has made decisions for the Lord, more than likely. And by the way, if you're here today and you're not saved, if you've never given your heart and life to Christ, then the most important thing you can ever do is to make today the day of salvation in your life, to give your heart and life, place your faith and trust in what Jesus Christ has done for us by dying on the cross for you and for me. And saying, I can't work enough, I can't be enough, I can't do enough. God, it's only through you. I give my life to you. I've done it my way for too long, and I'm at my wit's end. God, I need you. If you'll cry out to Him, He will save you. The Bible tells us very clearly. But if you're saved, then you've already made that commitment to God, right? And I think it's been said before that really everybody wants revival, right? Oh man, we want revival. We want God to do a mighty work. Do you know what revival is? Revival is just basically renewing commitments that you've already made to God. Think about what the revival we would have if every person in this room, and I'm talking to myself included, would just live out the promises you've already told God you're going to do. Imagine with me what our church would look like. Imagine what our world would look like if every Christian actually followed through on the decisions they have already made for Christ. All right? When you get saved, that's the what more can and if you're saved the biblical way, what more of a decision can there be than you're telling God, I'm yours. From this point forward, God, I belong to you. Whatever you want from me, I'm yours. That right there, if you've not made any other decisions, that right there is obviously the most important one. But look at how it affects our lives. Look at church attendance across our country declining. Is that because less and less, there's not as many Christians anymore? No, I think there's a bunch of Christians that are out there. I just think we're allowing the devil and allowing ourselves and the world to hinder our progress to the point where we become stagnant and nothing gets accomplished for him. I firmly believe that God has so much in store for this congregation, this church, and for you personally. But I also believe that God, I've heard it said God's a gentleman, right? He doesn't force himself upon anybody. That's why when a person gets saved, you're giving your heart and life to Christ. God doesn't force you to be saved. I firmly believe that God, I know there's a lot of people in this world who believe that God picks and chooses who will be saved. And if you're saved, then if he picks you, then there's nothing you can do not to be saved. That, you're going to be saved no matter what. I just don't believe that. I believe every person has a free will to choose. God doesn't force himself upon anyone. And the same thing's true, I believe, when it comes to his work and furthering his kingdom. I believe that God has a plan for this church and for your life and for your family that's bigger than anything you could possibly ever imagine. I really believe that. Again, we talk with teenagers all the time. Teenagers, you need to follow God's will for your life, right? Because God's will for your life is so much better. I can't tell you what it is, but it's so much better than the best situation you could ever think of for yourself, right? We all agree with that. But it's true for us too. God's will for our lives, God's will for your family, for your marriage, is so much greater than anything that you could ever come up with. Ever. And I believe that God has a great plan for you and your family and for this church. But again, he's not going to force himself upon us. I believe we have to invite him to work. We have to be involved in what he's already doing. And say, God, again, recommit our lives. Say, God, I want to finish the task. I want to accomplish what you want to accomplish. God, I don't want to be the reason. It's a big prayer of mine. I personally don't want to be the reason that God doesn't work like he wants to. I don't want to be the hindrance for this church or for my family. And I think every Christian should pray that prayer. God, help me not to be the reason that you're not accomplishing what you want to do. And I think Nehemiah is a great example of that. Nehemiah is a great example of a guy who had every reason in the world to quit. He had every reason in the world to put down the tools and say, and just walk away. It's too difficult. It's not worth it anymore. But he didn't do that. And we see in the context again as Nehemiah has gone back to help rebuild the wall around Jerusalem because he's upset because it's in ruins. And he can't stand it because the city has come back to God, and with the wall being still laying in ruins, it's not a good sign. It's not a good look. And so he wants it to be rebuilt. And so what does he do? He says, God put this task before me. I'm going to accomplish it no matter what. And so, just to recap very quickly, we saw the first 2 points. We started point number 3. But what do you do? How do you handle the hindrances that come our way? Whether it's the world that is coming our way, that's trying to stop what we're doing, whether it's the devil in your life or whatever, the temptations that come your way. How do you handle those interruptions in your life and keep pressing on for the cause of Christ? That's what we should all be about, right? Keep pressing on. Keep doing. Keep on keeping on. Keep working for God. Well, the first thing that Nehemiah didn't do, and the thing that we should not do, is we cannot get involved in negotiation. You remember the guys, Sanballat and Tobiah, and there was another one, tried to say, hey, Nehemiah, just come sit with us. Come talk with us. They wanted him to stop the wall. Listen, just stop the progress for a little bit. Come talk with us. Let's have a meeting. And I love what Nehemiah said pretty frankly. He just said, no, I'm not going to do it because the work I'm doing here is too important. I'm not going to stop it to come talk with you. Which he knew what they were going to do anyway. He knew they were going to try to talk him out of it, or maybe even worse. But he said, no, I'm not willing to do it. And we kind of related that to us, is that we cannot negotiate with the devil. If the devil gets you thinking about things that you should not be thinking about, the longer you think about them, the more likely you are to do them. You say, oh, I know what God wants me to do, but then this thought pops in your head, I know this is what's right, but if I just do this one time, or if I just miss this one time, if I just, hit the snooze button, right, again, if I just hit it a couple more times, maybe 5 more times, I got a lot going on, and we start thinking about it, and the longer you think about it, and the longer you allow those thoughts to infiltrate your mind, the more likely you are to say, you know what, all right, I'm not going to worry about it today. I'm not going to do it. No point in being at church today. There's no point in, I'm not going to, I'm just going to, whatever, you fill in the blank. We cannot negotiate with the devil. It will always turn out bad. Nehemiah knew that, and so he nipped in the bud and said, no, I'm not willing to negotiate. But the second thing is that we cannot give in to intimidation. Well, Sanballat and Tobiah, when they tried to negotiate and Nehemiah wouldn't have it, they finally just kind of put out an ultimatum and said, Nehemiah, okay, you won't sit down with us? Well, here, listen to me now. We're going to tell the king that you're trying to start a rebellion. And he's going to nip this in the bud. So why don't you, again, come talk to us so we don't have to do this drastic measure. They were trying to intimidate him. Nehemiah, stop the work or we're going to do this. They were blackmailing him. And he said, no, not going to do it. The king is the one who gave us permission to do this. He knows we're not trying to rebel. He knows we're just trying to build a wall. He said, just get over it, fellas. And again, we can't give in to intimidation. Man, the devil likes to try to intimidate us, doesn't he? Those thoughts that pop in our head again. And again, the thing about this is, most of these intimidations, most of these hindrances, there are some that we see on the outside, but most of them happen on the inside, don't they? Most of these things, now in Nehemiah, they were wholeheartedly happening on the outside. These people were physically coming to him. And you may have people come into your life that try to hinder you, but most of the time, it's right up here. The battle's right up here. In between these 6 inches in between your temples is where most of our hindrances come. And we can't give in to negotiation, but we also can't give in to intimidation. When the devil whispers in your ear and says, you know what? Don't even try to live for God. You're not good enough. You're not strong enough. Remember the last time you tried to live for God and how you just fell flat on your face? You did so good and then you messed up and you started back at square one. Don't do it. Don't waste your time. Don't waste the pastor's time. Don't waste the other preacher's time. It's not worth it. Oh man, I wish I could tell you stories and I can't, for privacy's sake, but so many people that I've talked with and counsel with, it's one of their big things is that I keep struggling. I can't live. Who told you were supposed to live a perfect life? Where did you ever read that God was looking for perfection? If you read that anywhere, you're not reading the same Bible that I'm reading. Now, I think we should strive to be holy and strive to live perfect, even though I know we can't do that. But who in their right mind would say, well, you know what, I can't live perfectly, so I'm just going to do whatever I want to do anyway. Not a child of God, hopefully. And so the devil likes to whisper and says, you're not strong enough. You're not good enough. You can't do this on your own. And you know what our response should be? Is what we ended on last week. Our response should be, you know what, devil, you're right. I'm not good enough. And I'm not strong enough. But I have one inside my life who is good enough and who is strong enough. I have one inside my life that's greater than this world around me, that's greater than you, and I can do it with his help. Not on my own, but with his help. So don't negotiate. Don't be intimidated. And the third one we ended up on last week, and this one we'll pick up, was don't fall prey to elimination. Don't fall prey to elimination. You say, what do you mean by that? Well, we started with the verses we read, verses 10 through 13 of Nehemiah chapter 6. And the verses in there is that Sanballat and Tobiah had gotten a priest and probably a priestess to come to Nehemiah and say, listen, there's a plot to kill you. Why don't you come into the temple and hide out in the temple until this threat goes away? Well, of course, it was a lie. There was no plot to kill him, more than likely. But the problem was that it was a sin to go into the temple if you weren't a priest, or where they were asking him to go was a sin. And Nehemiah flat out said, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to get me to sin so that you can turn around and tell all the people, well, look at your fearless leader Nehemiah. Look at the decisions he's making. Is this who you really want to follow? And Nehemiah said, I'm not willing to do that. He realized what their plan was. He knew that he should be afraid. He should probably act that way, but if in doing so he would sin and would give them a reason to have an evil report against him. That might be a reproach against him. They wanted to discredit his name, and he said, I'm not willing to do that. And so we ended last week on this point about don't fall prey to elimination in our own lives is that don't think just the big sins are the ones that will take you down. The vast majority of people who ruin their testimony, it happens because of the small things that we don't take care of. Now, I like the story of the Titanic. I like history, and the Titanic is one of those things it's hard not to just find fascinating. But for many, many years after the sinking of the Titanic, of course, everybody knows it was an iceberg, but for many years, everybody thought it was, when they hit this iceberg, it opened this big gash in the side of the hull that sunk it, when obviously we know it sunk. But when they finally got enough technology to get down there and see the Titanic, to find out where it hit and to find out all the stuff about it, they were kind of surprised because it wasn't one big hole in the side of the ship. It was a series of small slits along the side. Now, one of those or two of those slits wouldn't have mattered. But because there were so many of them that had cracked open, that's what caused. Those small things added up. And of course, we understand it sunk the unsinkable Titanic, right? In our own lives, we think, oh, if I can just avoid the big sins, right? If I can avoid murder, okay, check, hopefully. If I can avoid, adultery, if I can avoid, if I can avoid the quote unquote big sins, I'll be okay. You know what? If that's your thoughts, and you say I can do the small ones, but just avoid the big ones, the devil's got you right where he wants you. Think about that. In our world there is no, black and white anymore. And I'm not talking about race or skin color. I'm talking about there is no right or wrong. Everything is gray, isn't it? Everything's gray in our world. Everything's subjective. What's your truth may not be my truth. And it don't matter what we're talking about. Everything is a gray area. And so it's easier now more than ever to get involved in things and nobody bat an eye at them. Because as long as you don't do the big ones, the big sins, you'll be okay. Let me tell you, it's dangerous, dangerous territory. We've got to always be on guard like Nehemiah was and realize that the devil, whether it's in our mind or whether it's people that we hang around or whatever places we go, every little thing matters. Every little thing matters. One of the biggest things that I had when I was a youth pastor that I really had a hard time getting across to our young people, and it's difficult. It's difficult for adults as well, is something as simple as the music that we listen to. You know what? I don't listen to a lot of music. Okay, I listen to talk radio. I don't know. I'm a nerd, and I like to hear people talk. Music doesn't do it for me a whole lot, but people talking do. When I get my mind engaged and thinking about conversations, I don't care if it's about, some rare sea turtle in, that I'll never go to. It's interested in me and I like it. But I know that music is a huge thing. It's a billion, trillion dollar industry. But music has an effect on people, has an effect on you that you may not realize. And I'm not looking down on you when I say this because, I struggle with these things as well. But I used to get on our teenagers all the time because they're listening to such filth. And at any given moment, you look on the top 10 most downloaded songs on iTunes, and I don't even know if they have iTunes anymore, I guess, things have progressed so much. But the top 10 songs at any given time, and you start Googling. You may not know what they are. Google them and start reading the lyrics. And I guarantee you the people that you know and love in your life are listening to these songs. And the vast majority of them are so filthy and they're so vile. I was getting gas just this week, and a lady pulled up beside me and had her radio blaring. And I had my kids in the car, and she had her radio blaring, and it was a song that was using the F word every other word, and thankfully she had just stopped, and then she didn't get gas. She got right off. But it was bad. I'm thinking, somebody's listening to this. I know she probably could care less. But so many, listen, and not just young people, Christians listen to that same type of music and say, it's just music, Brother Adrian. It's not that big of a deal. But what you allow into your mind, what you allow into your eyes, the things that you watch, the things that you listen to, it's going to have an effect on us. And so we've got to knit those things. We've got to always be on guard like Nehemiah was. I think about anger. Is anger something I struggle with? And we were talking with Brother TJ yesterday at our work day, and he was trying to do something, and I didn't have the right tools. Of course, Brother TJ is one of those guys who always has the right tools, right? And I'm one of those guys who never has the right tools. That's just me. And I told him, I said, I know they always say, having the right tool, makes the job and makes things easier. I said, I would never know because I don't ever have the right tool. I just make do with what I have, right? And I've got a lot more tools recently than I ever have in my life, and I still don't have the right tools all the time. So we were trying to change. We were working on a light switch, and I had given him a screwdriver that was way too small, and so it kept slipping every time he was doing it. He goes, this thing's aggravating. He goes, you never seen, he said, he goes, this thing, or he said, this thing's making me mad. I said, oh, tell me about it. He goes, you never seen me mad, have you? I said, no, not that I can think. I'm not seriously man. He said, it's been a long time since I've been really, really mad. He said, I get aggravated a lot, though, but it's been a long time since I get really, really mad. Listen, anger is something I struggle with. It is. I started thinking about anger and how easy it is to fly off the handle and what to do in those situations. Again, it's easy in a moment of anger, right, to say something, to do something that we regret, that we can't take back, that will ruin your testimony and will eliminate you from what God's trying to do and do through you in your life. And I think about Nehemiah. You know, again, I struggle with anger. I like going to Sam's Club. Okay, something about Sam's Club. I like it a lot better than Walmart. I know you can get a lot more stuff at Walmart, but Sam's Club, I like stuff in bulk. Stuff I'll never use. But when I see like a 15-pound bag of peanuts, it's amazing to me that they make stuff that big, and I've got to get them. I've got to get something like that. Got to have it. But Sam's Club I'm enamored with Sam's Club, and it's the most wonderful place in the world to me. Sam's Club. By the way, you can feed a family of 6 for like $12 at Sam's Club, and I love it. Okay, so it's key. But it's the most wonderful place in the world until you go to checkout, and then it becomes a war zone. It's an absolute war zone. I see little old ladies pushing people with their shopping cart to get to the checkout. Now everything's self-checkout now. And so it's like there's no law and order in the land anymore. It used to be you had to wait in line, but now everybody's self-checkout, and it's ugly, right? And I have a gift, okay? You say, I know you're gifted, but no, I have a gift. All right, here's my gift. I have a gift to always pick the slowest line that's ever going to be. Just do. God's given me this special gift, and if you want, I can share my tips with you. But I don't care if you're at Walmart or Sam's Club, wherever you go. If there's 10 lines open, which I know at Walmart's very rare, if you go anywhere and there's a bunch of lines, you ask me which one to pick, and I'll pick it, and it will be the one that I'll be there after everybody else is long gone. Listen. I'll never forget one time I thought, I'm going to break this streak, and I got in line. There was only one person in line, and every other one had like 3 or 4 people in. I got in line one time at Walmart, and it was a couponer. A couponer. She had a binder of coupons. Never seen a binder full of coupons before. But I guarantee you, if I see somebody with a binder, I run in the opposite direction now. One time this is no lie, one time I got behind a guy who it was one thing he bought. It was like $3 and something. I promise you, he paid in nickels. Nickels! Who has that many nickels? He pulled out a pocket full of nickels and was going, and I'm like, are we serious here? I mean, and it's all I can do to control my tongue and just be like, I'm trying to think, I'm a preacher, I can't do this, but it's difficult. It's difficult. I know, I need to go get on the altar right now. But it's hard. It's hard not to lose your temper. It's something that happens. Anger is a reality. We all deal with it. We all struggle with it. What do we do with anger, though? Well, listen, I want you to understand, anger is not a sin in and of itself. The Bible tells us, Psalm 7:11, God judgeth the righteous, and God is angry with the wicked every day. So God's angry at the right types of things. So it's not wrong to be angry at the right types of things, but we got to understand that what we do with anger can be a bad thing. See, when you get angry, it's the same fight or flight response that happens. When you start to, adrenaline starts to pump into your bloodstream, your blood pressure increases, your heartbeat accelerates, your eyes dilate, your hands start to sweat, your mouth gets dry, your muscles will start to get all the sudden burst of energy, and that's what happens when we get angry. I've been there before in the Walmart line. I've felt all those responses before. By the way, that's an involuntary response that we cannot help. So it's anger is not wrong in and of itself. It's what we do with anger that's a sin. Well, if we follow the world's advice, what's the world's advice? How to deal with anger? Just let it out, right? It's like our family's been watching the Marvel movies and the Incredible Hulk. Our girls love the Incredible Hulk, this big green guy. Hulk smash. That's what he does. He's angry. He just smashes stuff. And I think that's what our world says. Just smash something. If you're upset, There are even rooms that you can go to and pay money to go to that's full of electronics and dishes that you can pay just to go in there and break them and let off some steam, right? They give you a bat or a golf club and just have you break TVs and radios and smash plates just to let off some anger. Think about the people getting killed at Little League games or the road rage. Actually, I'm a pretty aggressive driver, and I actually can't stand it because she's a very passive person, and she hears on the news somebody gets shot because of road rage, and so every time I honk at somebody, she's like, "Don't do that. They might have a gun. Don't do that. You don't ever know." And it's true. You really don't ever know. You don't ever know. And of course, always in the movies, the Bible tells us Ephesians 4, "Be ye angry and sin not." So be angry, but don't sin. "Let not the sun go down upon your wrath, neither give place to the devil." So what did Nehemiah do when he was angry? He had every reason to be angry. I don't have time to read it, but if you go back to chapter 5 and you read the first 13 verses of chapter 5, there was many things that happened that would be the reason for Nehemiah to get angry. He really was fine through it all, but until other brothers of his in Christ started backstabbing each other. That did it for him. He wanted to lose it all. But let me give you a couple of tips very quickly of what he did. Number one, he just admitted that he was angry. What an awesome thing to do, just admit that you're angry. Look at Nehemiah chapter 5 and verse 6. It says, "And I was very angry when I heard their cry and these words." He was hacked. He didn't try to hide it. He was upset. You know what we do when we're angry? Now, I'm not saying you should explode, but when we're angry many times, I'm guilty of this, they call it gunny sacking. You push it down real deep inside of you, right? And you just try not to let anybody know that you're angry. And that's one of the worst things you can do, because what happens? You bottle it up, and you bottle it up, and you bottle it up, and then ultimately what happens? It's got to come out, right? It's got to be unleashed. And more times than not, you know where I'm going with this, our anger releases on somebody or against somebody that never even deserved a bit of it, right? I deal with things at church and with the school and talking with people and other things in my life, and I get frustrated over things, and guess who gets the brunt of most of that? Ashley. And I hate it. And I've tried to work on it, but many times, and she's got to the point now where she'll look at me and she goes, "You're not angry at me, so stop." And she's right. I'm not angry at her, but I just got to release it. And so Nehemiah tells us, number one, just admit that you're angry. Just admit that you're angry and deal with it the right way. So he admitted that he was angry. Number two, he stopped and thought about it. He stopped and thought about it. Verse 7 of chapter 5 says, "After thinking through it," is what the New Living Translation says. Our text says, "I consulted with myself." That's pretty neat, isn't it? Before he flew off the handle, he just stopped and said, "You know what? How should I handle this situation? What is the mature response to this situation?" Think about how much anger would be eliminated if we would do that in our lives and just say, "You know what? Yes, I'm angry. I'm peeved, but let me stop and think, what's the best reaction here for me?" And then the third thing that he did was that he called a meeting together and he communicated a very well thought out proposal of, after he had stopped and thought about it, of how to fix the situation. And by the way, after he thought about it, the way to fix the situation was not to fly off the handle. It was not to say something ugly or abusive or whatever. He stopped and he told the people what he thought about their situation. He said, "I think it's wrong what you're doing to your brothers, and it needs to end." He said, "You're putting your brothers into permanent slavery. That's also wrong." And the third thing he said, I think this is really convicting. He said this: "You are looking bad in front of all the other surrounding nations." Not only are you hurting your brother, but you're hurting your testimony. You're hurting your testimony because other nations are watching you, verse 9 tells us. And you're hurting that. I tell you, it hits me to the core. Because not only does my anger hurt people I love, but it can also ruin my testimony. It can eliminate me from the work that God's called me to do. And so when those hindrances come, when those things come, we've got to eliminate them. We cannot allow our work for God to be eliminated because of the choices we make. So make good choices. Always be on guard. Don't let your guard down for even a second. There was a story, I hesitated even to read the story, but I thought it was good. In 1908, in baseball, in the National League season, there was a very fierce battle against the Chicago Cubs and the New York Giants. And in the last game for the championship, it was tied. It was the bottom of the ninth. The Giants were at bat. There were 2 outs. There were 2 men on base. And the winning run was on third. To win the game, the guy was on third. That's all they had to do. Well, a rookie named Fred Merkel was on first base. So the batter hit a single, and that should be the ball game, right? They should win the game. Batter hit the single, the runner on third, he does go home. That's the run. Here's the issue, though. If the runner on first doesn't make it to second before an out's called, the run doesn't count. Well, in all the hullabaloo, the guy who was on first, when he ran and when he saw the guy score from third, he never touched second base when he was rounding the bases. Well, the other team knew this, and so they were like, hey, if we can just get the ball to second base and touch the base, this game's over, and we've won. Even though the other team thinks they've won, we got to do this. So they're trying to find the ball. Well, guess what? The Giants knew that was rough. They took the ball and they threw it into the stands, so nobody could get it. And the Chicago Cubs noticed what was happening. They ran up into the stands, got the ball from the guy, threw it back to second base, and the umpire saw it jumping up and down. So the umpire saw it. The umpire called him out, and the Chicago Cubs won the game. Now think about that. Who should have won that game? The Giants. Why didn't they win the game? Because of a stupid mistake of not touching second base, and it eliminated them from the championship. More times than not, the things that eliminate us from the work of God are flat out silly and dumb things that we should have just nipped in the bud and done because we knew it was right, and we just didn't do it. So we cannot allow ourselves to be eliminated. Number 4, this one's very, very simple. Don't give up supplication. Look at verse 14 of chapter 6. This is Nehemiah. He says, My God, think thou upon Tobiah and Sanballat according to these their works, and on the prophetess Noadiah and the rest of the prophets that would have me put in fear. Now, we don't have time to go through the entire book of Nehemiah, but the entire book of Nehemiah demonstrates that Nehemiah was a praying man. Whenever he needed guidance, he prayed. Whenever he was grieving, he prayed. Whenever he was facing hindrances, he prayed, and he kept on praying. Nehemiah chapter 6, verse 9 says, Now therefore, O God, strengthen my hands. Again, he's praying. And the Bible tells us that we should, Ephesians 6, we should be praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, and watching thereunto with all perseverance and supplication for all saints. Prayer has to be an integral part of our lives. I've already mentioned it's got to be an integral part of our church, but it has to be an integral part of your life as a believer. And yes, there has to be those scheduled times of prayer. And yes, there's those times of just kind of an emergency SOS that you're sending up to God. All those times and things are going to happen. But prayer should not only be our first resort, but it has to be a habit that we have in our lives. It has to be a habit. A habit that we, if you got some downtime, pray. If you're dealing with something, quit stewing on it and pray. If somebody hurts you, don't think about how you're going to get them back. Pray. If you don't know what to do, pray. Now, some of you are thinking, you know what, I know I should be doing that. Then why aren't you? Why don't we do that? Prayer has to be an integral part of our lives. And then number 5, in closing, he says, don't lose your determination. Don't lose your determination. Look at verse 15 and we'll close. So the wall was finished. We get all the hindrances that came through there. Now verse 15. The wall was finished in the 25th day of the month, Elul, in 52 days. That wall was finished in 52 days. And it came to pass that when all our enemies heard thereof, and all the heathen that were about us saw these things, they were much cast down in their own eyes, for they perceived that this work was wrought of our God. Moreover, in those days, the nobles of Judah sent many letters unto Tobiah, and the letters of Tobiah came unto them, for there were many in Judah sworn unto him, because he was the son-in-law of Shechaniah, the son of Arah, and his son Jonathan had taken the daughter of Meshullam, the son of Berechiah. Also they reported his good deeds before me, and uttered my words to him, and Tobiah sent letters to put me in fear. Now, over and over again, Nehemiah faced hindrance after hindrance after hindrance to stop him from the work of God. But he kept with it. He was not a quitter, especially when it came to serving the Lord. In spite of all the hindrances, which the verses we read told us there were spies for the enemy even. The wall was finished in 52 days. Now that was encouraging for the Jews, wasn't it? But it was very discouraging for their enemies. But Nehemiah, again, he did not take credit for it. Look at what he says in verse 16. This work was done by our God. He knew that. They knew that. All the people watching knew this was not normal. This didn't come by just man's hands. This work was done by our God. But guess what? Guess who God used? God used a simple man by the name of Nehemiah. Yes, it was God's work, but God's chosen vessel in that time was a man, a human being, just like you and me, who decided that God's called me to a task. God's called me to live for Him, and I'm not going to let anything stop me from His calling on my life. What a challenge to us. What a challenge to all of us who are believers, that we've all already made commitments to God, as we mentioned already, that God, I'm yours. God, you're not just my get out of hell free card. You are my Lord and Savior. You're the master of my life. We've already told Him that, if you're saved, hopefully. Or you may not be saved if you've never, if that's not the reason that you got saved. Then why do we let so many small, insignificant things keep us from the work? Not only would it be encouraging to all your brothers and sisters that are here to say, hey, I'm putting my hand to the plow, I'm all in. God, I'm yours. God, till my dying breath, I'm yours. How encouraging would that be for everybody in this room to make that commitment and say, I'm committing that I'm not going to let small stuff stop me. I'm not going to let big stuff stop me because my God is bigger. I'm going to stay committed till the breath leaves my body, till I don't have a heartbeat anymore. So not only would it be encouraging to us, but what else happened? It was a testimony to the surrounding nations, wasn't it? The heathen took notice. Not only will it encourage each other in this room, think about the difference it'll make in our community, in your home, in your workplace. When people start to notice, man, they're for real. They don't just say they're Christians like everybody else. Look at their lives. Look at, man, they don't ever miss church. Man, they're always reading their Bible. They're always getting away praying. They're always telling me about the Lord and inviting me to church. Would your coworker say that of you? Would your lost family say that of you? Man, I pray that we would make that commitment. Can't give up prayer. Don't give up supplication. Don't get eliminated because of some anger or something else. Don't eliminate yourself from the work of God. Don't negotiate with the devil. Don't do it. Don't be intimidated because greater is He that is in you and in me than he that is in the world. But when it's all said and done, we have to be determined. We have to determine that we're going to keep our eyes focused on God. There was an old preacher who, and this is the last thing I'll say, there was an old preacher who told a parable about a new convert who had a strange dream, and he was trapped down in a very deep well in the middle of the night. When he looked up out of this well, he saw one shining star, is all he could see. And when he saw that shining star, he said his feet started to lift off the ground. He was able to get out of the well. But every time he looked down to see what was below him, he started sinking again. And so the story went that the dream was this man, when he looked up, he kept his eyes focused on that one star until he eventually rose out of the well and he could put his foot on solid ground and he could be safe and secure. And the preacher told him it was a parable. And he said, here's what it means. And I think it's very clear what it means. He says, get your eyes off yourself and on your Savior. He says, get them off your disease and get them on your position. He says, now and here, turn your eyes to the Lord Jesus. Now let me say this, and I'm done. I don't know what hindrances you're going through. I don't know what battles you're facing right now. I don't know what the devil's trying to do to stop you, or what thoughts are going through your head, or what you're struggling with. I don't know those things, but I do know that the answer is the same. It's Jesus. If you will keep your eyes off of your problems, keep your eyes off of the unknown, and keep your eyes on our great God, who you know all about. He's always good. He cares for you. He's got a wonderful plan, a wonderful future for you. He only wants what's best for you. If you'll keep your eyes focused on Him, He will remove those hindrances so you can serve the Lord without fear or without worry. So how are you handling your hindrances? Every head bowed, every eye closed. Would you stand to your feet?